What is going on, everybody? Welcome back here to the channel. Welcome into the reveal. My number 21st ranked team in my NBA preseason power rankings with the deep dive into the Atlanta Hawks. I'm so excited to dive into this Hawks team today. Pretty fun team to talk about. If you guys are new, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe here to the channel for more great content. We have a bunch of stuff on the way. This series will get done. Just a sec, I have a major announcement as regards to this series, actually. So don't go anywhere. Hit that like button and subscribe. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the time the season starts. Takes 2 seconds, guys. Really does help all your support. Helps the channel because this does take a lot of time to create and make this series. Now, with that being said, we have a bit of housekeeping to do here. But first, the Atlanta Hawks, they do come in here. They are the last team. I can't officially announce that. They are the last team in this tier. A big group of teams in this tier, ranking from 27th all the way here to 21st. The Atlanta Hawks coming in with a 79.889 grade here and rounding out this group of, I think these teams, if everything goes right, could be playing teams. And the Hawks are at the top of this list. I feel really strongly about this Hawks team. If they're healthy, that they will for sure be one of the final 4 teams come April that are competing for a play-in spot. But like I said, we do have a bit of housekeeping, and we are getting a little bit later on into September. The series is taking a little bit longer, and we've gotten delayed a few times. So what I'm going to do is the next 3 teams in this series, unfortunately, numbers 20, number 19, number 18, all 3 of those teams will be combined into one singular episode. I'm planning on dropping that on Monday, as long as this gets dropped today, which is Saturday. I do plan on dropping that Monday. That way we can I'm not going to not talk about those teams. I have pretty strong opinions about all 3 of those teams, 20 through 18. One of those teams I think is being drunkenly overrated, but we'll talk about them when they get to their episode. But, for the sake of the series, so we can make sure we get through all 30 NBA teams. To speed this up, I will be doing that. It'll be a condensed episode, probably 30 minutes for each team, and it'll all be in one episode. So around an hour and a half for 3 teams. And then sometime middle of this week, we'll be kicking back off with number 17. And then by the end of the weekend, hopefully we're at number 16, which would be fun and kick you off that middle tier for me. So apologies for any of the fans of my numbers 20 through 18 teams. I hope I do you guys justice when I cover those 3 teams. And then we got some 2K content on the way. We're finishing our 25 under 25 series as well. So again, why would you not subscribe here to the channel? This is, a literally perfect time to do it with the NBA season starting up here soon. I was just joined by my guy, 6 Rings of Steel, as well in a recent video. Go check that out. So, all right, enough housekeeping. Let's get into this Atlanta Hawks team, Atlanta Hawks fans. And like I said, they come in 21st. And let's start this off how we always start things off here. Take a look at their offseason recap. Look at the additions and departures. And the Atlanta Hawks just ripped the Band-Aid off. They said, you know what? This team ain't good. We really what's the ceiling here? And for some just plain stupid reason, DeJounte Murray had a quote unquote better market available than Trae Young, which I think is again asinine. They trade DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans. In return, they get 2 first-round picks, one of them being the Lakers' first-round pick, which in a loaded Western Conference, that could very easily be a lottery pick for the Hawks this season. So I like them getting that draft pick from the Pelicans. And then you also, in that trade, you bring in Dyson Daniels, you bring in Larry Nance Jr., and I'm not going to lie, and maybe this is me just being a hater, I think my favorite move that the Hawks made this summer was them trading for Dyson Daniels and getting that Lakers first-round pick, where, like I said, the Lakers are one bad injury away. And, I guess you could say this about any team, but more specifically like the Lakers and the Suns and, the Warriors, obviously. Even the Suns, let's say it's Bradley Beal. I think they'll be able to manage, for an example, right? But the Lakers are an injury away from not making the playoffs, a significant injury where, let's say, Braun plays 50 games, knock on wood, obviously, that's a lottery pick next season. So that's probably my favorite addition they made this summer, is getting a Lakers pick for this season. You also add in as well like I said, you bring in Dyson Daniels, who I adored that 2022 draft process. And this is the guy that I think long term, and this is a spoiler, because I don't think it happens right away. I think long term, if he can continue to figure out the offensive side of the floor, then that's going to be a really, really like that's your backcourt of the future. Trae Young and Dyson Daniels. That is what we're looking for here in Atlanta. Kind of as our future, backcourt, right? A guy that can defend at a insanely high level, good like complementary playmaker as well. You don't need this insane playmaker, I think, to play next to Trey. So, I take the good with the bad. The shooting is what it is, but he's a really, really good defender, and I think he could take on some of those the best opposing guard defender offensive players. And honestly, he is a upgrade over he is a upgrade over DeJounte Murray defensively. I mean, immediate upgrade. So that's something Hawks fans are going to enjoy to see. So, like I said, I am a little bit lower on Zach Reese. I do get the prototype and or like them liking the archetype, excuse me, of this style of player. Good size, projects to be a good shooter, could be a good defender, but this is just probably the worst draft class in NBA history to have the first overall pick in. I mean, honestly, I get it. You're really crowded in this area, but I would have just taken Alex Sarr, who was my number one player on the board in this draft class, or hell, trade back. And honestly, I had Zach, I think maybe one spot ahead of this next guy that I'm about to mention. But again, if I'm Atlanta, I don't know if anybody would have done this and bit on an offer. But if I'm Atlanta, I would have rather taken a gamble on a guy like a Mattis Buzelis than drafting Zach Reese to say number one overall. And again, this take can age poorly. And Hawks fans, I want you to hold me to it and slander me. But that's kind of my take. They add Larry Nance Jr., just solid depth. They could be a stretch 5 in some cases, but also I think could be a 4. I do think he's most likely going to be kind of a stretch 5 that can is a really, really good, lob threat, good finisher around the basket. He's a okay kind of like short roll playmaker. Could do some other stuff there. Shot 41.5% from 3 last season as well. Good rebound, things like that. We'll talk about more later. Then they bring in David Roddy. Just okay depth, honestly. And that's kind of where I'm at with this Hawks offseason. Like I said, in my video with 6 rings to steal on my guy Matt, rather. We kind of talked about this Hawks offseason, and it's a objectively good offseason in the standpoint of did they get better? The answer is yes. I look at this Hawks team this year compared to last year. And by the way, one of the takes that I've consistently been right about is this Hawks team. I said the moment the DeJounte Murray trade got done, this was not going to work, and it didn't work. And I'm glad the Hawks pulled the Band-Aid off. But I look at this team, and I just have a few question marks regarding the outlook of this team. I think they're going to need some things to break their way, like a Lakers, potentially, getting an injury or something like that, missing the playoffs, you luck into another lottery pick in a loaded draft class. Now, with kind of my skepticism, if everything breaks right here, I mean, Atlanta's 2 years away from being back in Eastern Conference Finals contention, and that might be another hot take if everything breaks out in their favor. This is a team that maybe not this upcoming season, but 25, 26, for sure 26, 27, if the core of Trey, Jalen, Onyeka, and Zachary Reese, maybe Dyson Daniels is still around here. 25, 26 could be a very, very interesting year if they play their cards right and some things break out their way. But let's dive in here to the roster breakdown and talk about why I feel how I feel about this Hawks team and why they're kind of an interesting team to dive into. Before we get to some of that stuff, we do have to obviously, discuss our tiers here. And Quinn Snyder is at the very top of this tier of a bunch of really quality head coaches that I think you can win a title with. For example, this is kind of how I view this tier. Mike Budenholzer's in this tier. Now, I don't mean that because I think some people are going to call me crazy for having Quinn Snyder in the same tier as Bud. I have him definitively above Bud. And as a matter of fact, like Quinn Snyder is closer to breaking into that next tier of head coaches for me than he is like being in the middle of the pack of this tier. Like he is head and shoulders above the rest of the coaches in this tier. He is insanely innovative and creative with his concepts, his schemes on both ends of the floor. And I'm actually excited to see them this season. And I do not grade them out well defensively, but Quinn Snyder actually, along with maybe like me projecting with Dyson Daniels and hoping like guys like Okongwu and Jalen Johnson can continue taking steps forward as players. I don't have them in my dead last tier. They're defensively, they come in my tier 6 of NBA defenses, getting a C- grade for me, coming in 20th to 26th in the league. So they are a bottom 10 defense, but I think there is, a glimpse of hope. Like, again, can Quinn Snyder, with his insane geniusness, and Dyson Daniels getting a more advanced role, now that he's in Atlanta, Jalen and Onyeka taking steps, DeAndre Hunter, you're like, they have there's some optimism here defensively. And then I have him in my third tier of defense with a B- grade. This is a pretty decent bench. With a bunch of guys that I really, really like, even the ones I don't grade out too highly, like Dyson Daniels and Kobe Buffkin. I have them kind of as like replacement level guys. But, and honestly, like Larry Nance Jr. is probably in that tier too. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt, I suppose. But, those are two guys that I'm high on in Kobe and Dyson Daniels. So I think this is a good bench. And we'll talk about those guys here in just a sec. But the reason why the Hawks land here 21st in this power ranking series is because of Trae Young. Trae Young, and here's my rant, ladies and gentlemen. Trae Young is flat out one of the most disrespected players in basketball. It is at this point like Rudy Gobert. I guess at this point, John Morant, although that one is more because of him being an idiot off the court. I think most people that are smart, like that, follow basketball on a day-to-day basis understand that when John Morant is healthy, he's a top 20 player. And you just kind of have to separate the, him being an idiot off the court to him being like when he's on the court. I mean, he played all of 7 games or whatever last season. You stick with Ja here. And he very quickly reminded everybody that, oh shit, yeah, this guy's a top 20 player and it's not that close. So either way, it's Ja, it's Rudy, and I think very close behind them. And honestly, you can reorder this list any way you want. Trae Young is one of the 3 most disrespected players in basketball. We are not going to sit up here and act like Trae Young is not a damn near consistent 25 and 10 guy keeping heliocentric basketball alive. Like he has made Clint Capella so much damn money, and there's just so many bad takes and like just, in my opinion, flat out untruths around Trae Young's game. Does he turn the ball over? Yes. Is he a turnover prone guard? My answer is no. Because if the answer is yes, then Luka is a turnover prone guard. LeBron James is a turnover prone wing. You're looking at high volume, incredibly high volume, where like, and maybe Bron's not the example of this, but specifically Luka or Harden even in his prime, right? Where the offense it is them, right? These guys eat because of him. Even in Dallas with a Kyrie Irving, Kyrie eats a lot off of Luka. In Houston, those guys, maybe until the CP days at the end of that run, and like Russ, but like MVP Harden, those guys were eating off of him. So yes, you live with the turnovers. It's like the Josh Allen effect, NFL Josh Allen, the quarterback, where okay, he is Superman 9 times out of 10. And, oh, okay, this is a stupid play. And I'm not like saying it's not a stupid play. They will have like Josh Allen, the quarterback, and Trae as a playmaker. They will have some turnover prone games. Like, again, sticking with football, you think like the Jets game from last season with no Aaron Rodgers, and they just blew it because Josh Allen threw costly pass after costly pass that led interceptions. Trae Young will have those games like the in-season tournament, not the in-season tournament, the play-in tournament game against the Chicago Bulls. He was bad. And that honestly probably affects some of his stock and, value around the league right now, because the last time you saw him, he wasn't great. But come on, we are not going to act like it wasn't abundantly clear that he was not healthy. Trae Young was not healthy in that game. So again, just ignoring some of this stuff with Trae, I think is unfair. And again, we're talking about the turnovers, and the reason why you live with it, because Trae Young is pound for pound like one of the three best playmakers on planet right now. It's, we'll say four. I think he's in that tier one of truly elite playmakers. It is him, it is Luka, it is Tyrese Halliburton, it is Nikola Jokic. If you want to throw Bron in there, go ahead. I don't care, right? So you live with the turnovers. You just have to, right? Because there is not a pass on God's green earth that Trae Young can't make. There isn't a read he can't make. His processor and the ability to make some of the most just flat out batshit crazy passes is honestly only him and Luka can consistently make them. Not even a Bron or a Hallie or a Jokic can consistently make and pull off some of the passes that Trae and Luka can. And the shooting, because that's another take that I think is just flat out incorrect when we're talking about Trae and for specifically Trae. Like Trae Young, Trae Young is he is a really dynamic pull-up shooter, right? The biggest problem, and this is where you actually have an argument with Trae Young's like efficiency. The argument with Trae Young's efficiency boils down to the fact that he is and really never has been a great finisher around the basket. You got me. That is a very, very true statement. Trae, in a more slim frame, right, does not always absorb contact to finish around the rim at a high level. You got me. That is a objective take. I can't argue that. But what I can argue is the fact that on pull-up threes, 37%. Three-point shooting shot, 37% last season. You can also actually get me with the off-ball fit. That's why I've said on previous Lakers channels that when we're talking about like Trae Young to the Lakers, for example, which is a popular, trade destination for whatever reason, I'm more of a fan for that post-LeBron era than I am currently, because you're going to ask Trae eventually to play off-ball some, and I do question his overall effectiveness on the team and individually, if the ball's not in his hands. And if you want to count that as a negative for Trae, sure, why not? But his shot quality sucks. And again, another take that I'm going to I'm going to obliterate here or whatever, right? Shot quality does not mean you are chucking up shots for crying out loud. Shot quality more times than not means that, hey, look, the defense is so damn worried about you, they send extra attention to you to make sure you don't get quality looks off. And I'm not going to say Trae Young never shot chucks, because there will be times throughout games where you're like, Trae, that's not quite the 37-foot, pull-up jumper we would have liked to see right there. But legitimately, his shot quality sucks. Around the rim, his shot quality sucks, from the perimeter. He's a really, really talented, floater, obviously. And even though, like I said, that he is a bad finisher around the rim, and that's always been the knock around Trae Young, he's such a damn good driver to where that leverages his playmaking ability, his drive assist rate, and drive assist rate per B-ball index is percentage of drives leading to an assist off a pass out. He is in the 84th percentile per B-ball index with an A- grade in that category. 12.8% of his drives lead to assist. That's, excuse my language here, fucking insane, right? Trae Young is a legitimate offensive engine. He just is. And I think he is. And I've done film breakdowns and everything. This is almost a 10-minute monologue at this point. And I apologize. Some of you might have even clicked the video off by now. But Trae Young is incredible. And that's that. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't have him as like a superstar or as an elite player. He's still in this like all-star caliber tier for me. And it's simply because of the defense. Now, he took steps defensively last season where like he looked more engaged. He provided more effort on that end of the floor. He's still awful. So it's like going from being like the worst defensive player on the league, okay, to what, you're now the third worst defensive player in the league. I mean, not literally. That's not literally the number. If you look at his EPM, his EPM actually, right? Last season, estimated plus minus per dunks and threes. He was actually in the 22nd percentile of defense last season. Actually, the year before that, he was a little bit better. He was in the 46th percentile. If you look at B-ball indexes, defensive LeBron category, third percentile defender this year in that category in terms of like defensive impact. You go back to the 2022-23 season, he would have been in the also third percent. So again, he took very, very, very marginal steps forward as a defender. He still got awful. So that's my take there. And the rest of this team is kind of just constructed around him. And again, you have this evil genius in Quinn Snyder crafting this offense and the play design around Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, who I have the green arrow pointed up on, man. He is so ridiculously fun to watch as a player. And I don't know. We're going to get to the Vegas odds here at the end of the show, as always. But there's one particular Vegas odd that if this team is healthy, I think this team can very easily beat that. And I'm actually going to put money on that, one of the plays here at the end of the episode. But Jalen Johnson, one of my calls last season, breakout player of the year. If he met the qualification of games played, he should have been, he would have been my vote for most improved player. Jalen Johnson last season was spectacular, and he is such a good fit next to Trae Young. They kind of found their replacement for John Collins. I don't think he is like exactly John Collins, obviously, right? I think they have different skill sets to a certain extent, but the one thing they do have in common is these, wings, or not even wing, forwards with great size that can jump out the damn gym. And that's Jalen Johnson. Unreal finisher, above the rim athlete. And he's also like legitimately a really, really good screener. So there will be times where, actually, like they can run lineups where if they want Larry Nance Jr. space, who Larry Nance Jr. last season, if I'm checking like some stats again, he shot the three ball well last season. I don't know how real that is. Only took one attempt per game. You're really looking for like the volume back from his Cavs days, where 2019-20, 35% on 2.8 attempts. 2020-21, 36%, 3.3 attempts. Like if that's what you're getting out of Larry Nance Jr. to the point where he can actually be like a true stretch five, and space the floor for you, still be that athletic above the rim athlete, you can run some fun lineups now with like Jalen Johnson and Nance Jr., where it's, Jalen Johnson rolling to the basket and him being the ball screener, and it's Larry Nance Jr. spaced. And Trae can make the defense pay if the defense, legitimately tags off of Larry Nance Jr. and as they should. But back to Jalen Johnson, really, really kind of grew into his own, as a kind of a self-creator, able to get to the basket, with the ball in his hand. He also has done a nice job at, becoming and growing into as a short roll playmaker, because with playing next to Trae, that's a really, really important quality to have if you're like his primary screen target, is to be able to play make out of the short roll, because Trae Young's going to get all the aggressive coverages. He's going to see some blitzes and some hedging and, the drop even occasionally too. So to be able to play out of the short roll is so important. Jalen Johnson really, really showed the ability to do that last season. They gave him a decent amount, to keep him happy, I suppose, of self-creation opportunities out of ball screens and things like that. But what I really, really want to see Jalen Johnson continue to improve upon is just the ability to attack off of closeouts. He's in a 42nd percentile in terms of spot up efficiency last season per synergy. I would just like to see him be more efficient and attack off to be dynamic and honestly make the defense pay even. Would be nice to see him, continue to like up the volume with the mid-range jumper too. Shot 51% on mid-range jumpers, 51% on pull-up mid-range jumpers as well, but very, very limited volume. Only took 64 mid-range jumpers all last season. also has a really nice floater. Again, you'll see that a lot in the short roll game. One other thing, this is very, very minor, I would actually say, because he is such an elite athlete where he's like just punching everything. He only shot 47% on layups last season. I wonder how much stock do you really put into that? Because, overall last season, he shot 61% at the rim, which is pretty good. But again, he had 106 dunk attempts last season. So you take some of those out, and he is a little bit less of an efficient finisher around the rim. Not overly concerned about it, but it is something to keep an eye out on. Shot 39% on uncontested catch and shoot threes as well. So Jalen Johnson is only progressing and developing, like getting better. He's only 22 years old. He'll be 23 in December. So is there like an all-star jump in Jalen Johnson? It remains to be seen, but I'm not betting against Jalen Johnson. Really, really fun player. The fit makes sense. I think the combination of him, Trey, and Quinn Snyder, they know how to like work with each other and design looks for each other to get great opportunities. And yeah, I think it's great fit here. Next up, we have Onyeka Okongwu. I'm starting Onyeka Okongwu because, for crying out loud, will the Hawks just do it already? I'm tired of watching Clint Capella. Not much really to add actually to the discussion. I think they just need to find out what Onyeka Okongwu is. He's flirted with the ability to like be a stretch five and knock down some shots from the perimeter, maybe in the corners and things like that. Very, very loosely, done that in the regular season and in season. Playing tournament. Shot 37.9% on 58, spot up catch and shoot opportunities last season. So not something I'm banking on or anything like that. But, there is more upside for this fit with Onyeka Okongwu than it is with, consistently, rolling out the lineup of, Clint. Now, I will say with rolling out Clint, I do think you get more of a defensive anchor with Clint Capella because Onyeka Okongwu isn't a great defensive rebounder. His adjusted defensive rebound success rate is in the 47th percentile per B-ball index, coming out with a C grade there, and just not. He's a fine rim protector. He's actually a pretty good rim protector, but they, I think, would like to use him more as, a guy that can switch a bit more. And that's honestly where I think Dyson Daniels can come in and where this team could really reap the benefits of going to a Dyson Daniels at some point throughout the season. Because now you allow Onyeka Okongwu to be a little bit more of a versatile big and not like an anchor big, typically being, drop coverage primarily, looking to protect the rim at all times, not really being used as in switch heavy situations where, last season, Onyeka guarded centers 47% of the time. That's cool. But then he guarded power forwards 23% of the time, small forwards 11% of the time, two guards just a tad under 10% of the time. So they like to utilize him and be flexible with their defense. And you would lose that, I think, by throwing him in as an anchor big. So that is something to keep an eye out on. Good offensive rebound, really good offensive rebounder actually. 90th percentile on offensive rebounding percentage, and he's consistently been that way. Last season actually was his lowest season offensive rebounding percentage his entire career, and somehow he was still like in the 90th percentile. So he's a dominant offensive rebounder. Like to see him improve, like I said, a little bit more on the defensive glass with some of the success rate stuff. Don't think his positioning is always the best on the defensive glass. And then they have Bogdan Bogdanovic, Bogey, who I think in a best case scenario, and I do think, again, if we're talking about the ceiling for this team, best case scenario, I do think it's eventually going to come with Bogey coming off the bench and being like a six-man microwavable scorer, because I think that's what he's best at. Now, what he is going to be used as day one, as I am projecting him to be the starter here, I think he's going to be their movement shooter, where they can use so many creative actions. Again, the combinations of like him, the 3-man actions with him, Jalen Johnson, and Trae Young, him, Onyeka, and Trae Young. 4-man actions even where you can go like some stagger stuff with him and him coming off the screen from Jalen and Onyeka. Like they can really, really, really get creative here with some of their actions that they're going to run for a bogey. And I think he is a guy that has some playmaking in him. If Trae is in foul trouble or you need to get Trae off the ball, I think bogey in a pinch can do that. Not a good, finisher around the rim. That's actually like a common theme with these guys here is just a lack of true finishing around the basket. And that's kind of been Bogey's thing, along with just being a bad defender. Shot 42.1% per BBall index on corner threes last season. So they will utilize Bogey as a spot up guy, as a guy that can create his own shot because he's not going to have like aggressive defenses against him 9 times out of 10. Like I said, they'll let him create even. He shot an absurd 46% on pick and roll threes last season, which actually in terms of overall efficiency out of ball screens with him as the scorer, 94th percentile per synergy. So really, really, really versatile, offensive player in terms of his scoring and the ability to put the ball in the basket. And again, a really, really good fit. I think Quinn knows how to utilize a guy like Bogey really nicely. Plays off a Trae well. Again, a guy that can, in a pinch, create for himself, but really you're using him here to play off a Trae and, let this offense make opposing defenses pay for helping in the gaps to try to stop Trae off a ball screen on a drive, and it's Bogey in the corner making them pay. So, Bogey, good player. I mean, I think we know what he is at this point. He is now freshly 32. So I do begin to wonder, like it does creep in the back of my head now, like, okay, how much longer does he have here? Being this solid of a player, I wouldn't even use the word good. I think he's just solid. He's a fine starter, as you guys can see here. He does have one more year on his contract that is fully guaranteed. And then the next year, 2026-27, is a team option that is not guaranteed. So, we shall see. 4 years, $68 million. Like I said, only 51.9 guaranteed that last year. So it's a 4-year deal only in name. It's really a 3-year deal. So Atlanta hoping they can get 2 more really, really good years. And then, maybe you just let, Bogey walk off in the sunset. Dyson Daniels is easily your, clear cut, starting 2 guard. And Kobe Buffkin's like the shooting you need off the bench. So, next, we are actually go to Kobe Buffkin, a guy that I was really, really high on out of Michigan in the 2023 draft, who did not get a ton of opportunity last season. He played in 17 games. I will say this, in the very, 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 very limited sample size that he did get, he flashes the playmaking ability that I saw at Michigan. And that is what makes him so intriguing. He has really, really solid feel as a playmaker and is crafty. And, he had a few, multi assist games last season. You look at, that Nets game, 12 points, 3 assists, the Jazz game, 7 and 5 down the stretch. Also got some clock as well. So I'm a big believer in Kobe Buffkin. Very, very limited sample size, scored pretty well to ball screens, 1 point per possession on ball screens. You go back to his days at Michigan, really versatile offensive scorer, 72nd percentile in pick and roll ball handler scoring, played well out of, off ball situations and things like that. And I'm excited. I'm really, really hoping I get to, rave about how good Kobe Buffkin is heading into year 3 next season, hoping he has a breakout year 2 here in Atlanta. And then, kind of wrapping up, not wrapping up, but you still got to circle back around really quickly to Zachary Risachet, the 5th starter for me. Like I said, I do think I'm a bit lower on Zachary Risachet. I kind of was in the draft process. like I said, I would have preferred Atlanta trade back. And even though the fit wouldn't have been the cleanest, I would have preferred them maybe try to trade back and you get a guy like a Matas Buzelis. And I would have taken a shot on Matas Buzelis here in Atlanta and say, hey, look, everywhere before you got to the G League Ignite, you've been a good shooter. We're going to bet on that. And we're also going to bet on you, like, your physical traits being better, which I think is just flat out truthful. I also trust Maz more as a defender, projecting long term, which, again, I think the Hawks are projecting here with Zachary Risachet. Now, is Risachet probably the more day one ready guy? Sure. But, kind of like I've stated, this is probably the one draft class that you are dreading having the number one pick over, where I don't really know if it was a win-win scenario, if it was a true winning outcome for the Atlanta Hawks by having the number one overall pick. Except, it urged them probably to fully look at this thing and say, all right, let's retool here. And so maybe that's a plus. Maybe if they had the 12th pick or whatever they're projected to get, they'd keep DeJounte. But, I think, again, Zachary Risachet projects to be a really, really good shooter. I think he has pretty solid NBA athleticism. Dare I say good NBA athleticism. I think he'll be fine here. I think he's actually really, really going to benefit from playing next to Trae Young, excuse me. And if I'm Zachary Risachet, there is not a spot I rather would have been at than Atlanta. Like, I would have dreaded having to go to Washington or, maybe even Detroit. I would much rather be here in Atlanta than a lot of these other spots. So if I'm Zachary Risachet, I am just stoked right now. And then Dyson Daniels, a guy that, like I said, I love Dyson Daniels coming out. And, he took some strides last season, but, it didn't make sense why New Orleans was willing to kind of move off of Dyson Daniels. Again, kind of fits the bill. If you look at like some of the advanced metrics from B-Ball Index, didn't grade out that great as a finisher. That's kind of like the token here for these guards, and that is something to be concerned about. But despite that, he is an active cutter away from the ball. You can utilize him as a short roll playmaker because I do think he has the vision. He is a guard, mind you, for the most part. We've been talking about him this whole time as a 2 guard in the future. So utilize him in the screen game and things like that. I think he's a really, really good offensive rebounder, and that can really, really help this team get second chance points. He is such a damn good defensive playmaker, and that's where his value is going to come in at. You are praying that the jumper can, he keeps developing it and keeps growing confidence in the perimeter shot, because if that comes around to the point where he's something like this might be a bad comp, but really quickly, let's see if I can pull it up. If he could become something like like a Keon Ellis, where really good defender, and all you ask him to do is knock down open threes. Like, that's kind of the goal here, in my opinion, with Dyson Daniels. Because if that happens, then you completed the mission of getting a number 2 guard next to Trae, where it's a guy that can play make at a decent level, really, really good offensive rebounder, can use him in the screen game, can use him off ball as a cutter and things like that. But more importantly, defensively in the 3-point shot, if that continues to come around, because defensively, he is a ridiculous defensive playmaker, where 97th percentile in deflections per 75 possessions. He's in the 95th percentile for his passing lane grade for B-Ball Index, 92nd percentile for pit pocket rating, in terms of his ability to just is knack to just create on-ball steals and turnovers is incredible. He's getting tough matchups too, man. Like, you look at him, he's guarding the on-ball creators. He's not the most versatile guy in the world. They'll throw him on maybe an off-ball shooter or things like that every once in a while in New Orleans. But 20% of the time he's guarding primary ball handlers, 10% of the time secondary ball handlers, and then another 22% of the time he's guarding shot creators, which may be bigger guard / wings, right? So 50% of the time, give or take, he's guarding on-ball players. That is what this Atlanta Hawks team needs desperately. And I'm excited for Dyson Daniels. This is a really, really good spot for him, I think, where if it works out, I think it's going to really, really work out here in Atlanta if it does ultimately pan out. If it doesn't, then honestly, you kind of shrug your shoulders. But I think at the very least, he's a really, really capable defender and great defender that I think doesn't get enough credit. And I think we're going to see, this upcoming season, what he's able to do on the defensive end. Then they have some other like depth pieces that I think we know what they are at this point. So I'm not going to highlight them too much, but DeAndre Hunter is just DeAndre Hunter at this point. I think he's like slowly turning into and maybe I'm being disrespectful and harsh, but he's slowly turning into like the next Harrison Barnes, where if he's your starting 3, he's not here. So I do like it a little bit more. If he is your starting 3, then I guess it kind of just shrug your shoulders. You just don't, you're just not all that excited for it. Like he's just fine. Like he's a fine defender. He's a fine shooter. Shot actually really, really well from 3 last season, but his shot quality, because defenses just weren't guarding him at a high clip. No sub creation bag, not a playmaker. He's an all right screener. He adds some value on the offensive glass, 66th percentile for adjusted offensive rebound success rate. Not a defensive playmaker, not all that versatile. I mean, that's not entirely true, but I guess he provides some versatility. So I don't know. He's just fine, right? We give him, fine starter. I like him a lot more here as the bench, as depth to kind of like relieve Jalen Johnson a bit. I don't really want to see him play next to Jalen Johnson a ton. I like them kind of coming in and out for each other. But and then Clint Capella, who, I mean, again, the fact that he's still here is a credit to, I think, Trae Young just feeding him lobs. Played 73 games last season. Another guy's not a playmaker. We know what Clint Capella is, and he is a damn dominant, rebounder on the glass. It's actually insane. His ability on the offensive glass, nuts. 94th percentile adjusted, offense rebound success rate. Not much of a post player, obviously. He's also a flat out amazing screener. You would like to see him sometimes finish, a little bit through contact more. I do think if you're able to like keep a body in between him and the rim, that's always been my take with Clint, especially like post Harden days. If you're able to like keep a body in between Clint and the basket, I do think he can struggle with finishing through contact and, being that aggressor around the rim that you would want from your big. He's a good shot blocker. Like he is actually the anchor big and for this defense. And I like potentially like playing Onyeka. And I like having those 2 guys step where you have 2 guys that have distinct skill sets, where you have this a little bit more versatile big in Onyeka Okongwu that I think can protect the rim, but you like to see him be more versatile, be more switchy, can hedge and move a little bit better laterally. Also like a stretch 5 offense, potential to grow into that, where Clint is very much more modern. Not modern, traditional 5. I'm going to play drop coverage a billion times and protect the rim, and I'm going to catch lobs and dunk and not really have much of a post game. Like that's Clint Capella. That's him in a nutshell. Always been this ultra elite offensive rebounder too. You have to throw that in the conversation as well when discussing Clint Capella. And that is about it. They add Cody Zeller and David Roddy, perfectly fine depth pieces that I do like. Garrison Matthews is still here. This Hawks team, man, they have some nice pieces. One last bit of housekeeping. We are making a change to the power ranking series. So what you guys see here is the Hawks players' overall grades. These are their overall players. We don't have a defense graphic for this episode, but starting with the number 17th ranked team in the series, we'll be giving these players offensive ratings where you're going to get, like, for example, Trae an 88 overall, and then a defense grade, which would be, let's just say a D-. And then that's where you get my overall grade. Or Trae's offensive grade wouldn't actually be an 88, be a little bit higher. But the defense overall or whatever will balance it out, and I'll give you guys my actual overall grade. Think 2K style. So I'm excited to get that started around the 17th team, which again will be sometime this upcoming week. But let's wrap up here with kind of the strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll take a look at we'll take a look at our Vegas odds. And strength number one is Trae Young. I mean, I ranted about him for 10 minutes for a reason. I'm not going to do it again here, I promise. But one of the best on-ball players in the league, and a very underrated player. One of the three most disrespected players in the league. It's in any order: him, John Morant, and like Rudy Gobert. Trae Young is a real strength of this team. Strength number two, it is insanely innovative here in Atlanta with some of the concepts they'll run. Quinn Snyder is a evil genius, mad scientist. Looks like he's maybe even aged a few years coaching that DeJounte Murray, Trae Young duo. But now you have a little bit more roster balance. This team makes more sense. If anything, if I were to add like a strength, this team does make more sense on paper, despite the fact that I am still a little bit weird about the direction where we'll talk about that with the weaknesses. Things don't work out with your young guys. I don't know what the plan is. Do we just blow it up eventually, or like what's the long game here? And then actually, I am kind of like being a hypocrite. I think there are promising young players here, though. I think Jalen Johnson, he could become an all-star one day, as early as this season even, or be an all-star caliber guy. I love Dyson Daniels. I'm high on Kobe Buffkin. Like Zach Reese to say is a promising young player, regardless of if I'm high on him or not. Ayeka Nkongwu, who I'm begging that they start at this point so we could just really, really see with him in a advanced role what he looks like. And this team can kind of figure out if Ayeka's the starting big of the future or not. The rim self-creation in terms of being able to create for yourself, like score at the basket, is a real concern of mine. A lot of these guys, like I mentioned, are just not good finishers. That's kind of the archetype they want in all of their guards here is, hey, do everything well except finish around the basket. Jalen Johnson's a growing self-creator, but again, we even discussed how he shot 47% on layups last season. His is straight, I'm punching on you or I'm going to struggle a little bit. The defense, although there's some guys like a Dyson, I like Onyeka's upside. Clint's is a fine anchor. The defense is a concern. They do still rank in my tier 6 of NBA defense, for crying out loud. So I can't overly praise them. And there's only enough that Quinn Snyder can do here to change that. And then again, the direction. Like, look, man, this thing could be bad. Like, it could, like an injury or something like that. Could just be flat out bad. And this team doesn't work out. This team's the 12th seed. Okay, cool. What's the plan then? Because I think this team is kind of like locked in the middle right now where they don't know what they're truly doing. I truly believe if Trae Young's market, for whatever reason, it wasn't so damaged, they would have traded Trae this summer. So I don't think there's this overwhelming commitment to Trae Young, regardless of how good I think he is as a player. I don't feel like there's this overwhelming sense of commitment to trade. So again, if this thing doesn't go well this season, do they trade Trae at the deadline even or next summer? If this thing goes right, like again, I just question what the actual end goal is here. Now, again, like I said, if it works, I think this team in 2 years can be back to being one of the 5 best teams in the Eastern Conference. As a matter of fact, if the Hawks are inside like my top 18 next season, it would not surprise me if things break their way. So let's break down, our Vegas odds here. They're plus 35,000 to win the NBA Finals. I'm obviously staying the hell away from that. That's nothing to take serious. To come out of the East, they are plus 15,000. Again, staying away from that. Nothing too serious there. Plus 172 odds per FanDuel. This is all per FanDuel to make the playoffs. I would stay away from that. But if you are high on this Hawks team, okay. But the one I'm looking at is the over-under win projection. I look at this Hawks team and I say 35.5 wins. If this team's healthy, I think they clear 35. I don't know if it's by a lot. I'm not saying this team's a 45 win team or anything like that, but I would have set the over under at 38.5. I think they can to whether you're not sweating it out like the last game of the season. I think this team could pretty comfortably be like a 39 win team, a 40 win team this season if they're healthy. So And that's a pretty comfortable like gap between, that and 35.5 wins being the over under projection. So this team's healthy. I'm actually probably going to put something down on that one and maybe combine in a bigger parlay, because 35.5 wins seems low for this Hawks team, where again, Trey's healthy. He's shown you he's one of the top 25 to 30 players in the league. Quinn Snyder's a great coach. They have up and coming young players. This roster is just a more well-rounded like roster than Trey's had in a couple of years, essentially like since that conference finals team, I suppose. So I don't know, but that is my breakdown. My number 21st ranked team in this power ranking series, the Atlanta Hawks. I'm going to have number 20 through 18 in a speed run episode here in a couple of days, and then we're right back on track here with number 17 sometime this week. Make sure you guys stick around for all the amazing content we have here on the channel. It's such a great time to be a basketball fan. The season is back in a little over a month now, so we got to speed it up. So that's why we're doing stuff like this. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe here to the channel. And till next time, everybody, see ya, stay safe, and peace out.